Hey everybody, thank you for checking out the Freedom Depot YouTube channel. In this one, we're going to be going over precision rifle optics and kind of the anatomy behind them. We're going to be going over, why things are the way they are, what are the different controls you can find on one of these precision optics, and kind of what you're getting for your money, because these things aren't cheap. We are going to be going over options that are less expensive all the way up to the more higher end type of optics. We'll be going through the different features, like I said, the controls, and some of the things you're going to be getting in these optics that's going to make it more worth your money. So stick around. Hopefully you can learn something from this one, and let's get to it. All right, so what we have sitting in front of us here is a Primary Arms SLX 5-25 by 56 FFP with an Athena BPR mil reticle in it. And if you're not familiar with one of these, I just spoke some sort of other language. So let me break that down for you. In the primary optics line, the SLX means silver series. They have a silver, a gold, which is a little higher end, and their platinum, which is their very top end line of optics. That's going to be specific to Primary Arms. Other optics manufacturers will have other lines named different things, but in this case, that's what the SLX means. So this here, the 5-25 by 56 FFP, this is generally the nomenclature a lot of other companies abide to when they're naming their optics and just kind of the general size of them. So the 5-25, that is your magnification range. That's the first couple numbers here. At the low end, all the way down here, at the low end of the magnification, we have 5 power. That means from what your eyes are normally seeing, there's going to be a 5 times magnification to that. That's what the 5 is there. Zooming in all the way to 25. Now you're looking at 25 times the normal sight picture you would have with just your regular naked eye. So that 5-25, that's your magnification range. The next set of numbers here, the 56, that's going to be the diameter of your objective lens. This is the lens that's taking in all the light and kind of taking in that image and sending it through the rest of the scope. FFP, there's going to be 2 options here. You're going to see either FFP or you're going to see SFP. And that means first focal plane or second focal plane. And basically that's just referring to which focal plane the reticle is on. In a first focal plane scope, the reticle is going to be true and the subtensions in it are going to be true and correct at any magnification in its range. In a second focal plane scope, that reticle is only going to be correct at a specified point in the magnification range. We're going to be getting into that in future videos. What is first focal plane and second focal plane? Basically, that's what the FFP means, first focal plane. The Athena BPR mil part of it, that means that's what reticle is equipped in this scope. And we can do a little bit of a dive into that reticle in this video, but mostly we're just talking about the overall build of the scopes, and we can do a breakdown of different reticle options in a future video. But in this case, when you see Athena BPR mil on this scope, that's what that means. It's referring to the reticle that it has. Now at this point, we're going to be going from the front to the back on the scope and talking about the different features and controls and the different sizes of things. So here at the front, like we discussed before in the name, the 56, this is our objective. This is our objective lens, 56 millimeters. Moving back a little bit to the tube here, you'll commonly see this referred to as the tube. And in this case, it is a 34 millimeter tube. 34 millimeter tubes are becoming, they're not quite the standard yet, but they're just about there. That 34 millimeter tube gives you a lot more adjustments in your turrets. So to put that into perspective, in a scope that has one of the other options, a 30 millimeter tube, you may only get 15 mils of adjustment. In this 34 millimeter tube, we might get 20 to 30 mils of adjustment. So I'm able to turn this turret a lot more, compensate for a lot more bullet drop, and essentially shoot further. So now like I said, this one's a 34 millimeter. In a way, a step down from that is 30 millimeter. Another step down, or maybe even just to the side of that, is a 1-inch tube. 1-inch tube is slightly smaller than 30 millimeter. That used to be the standard for the longest time, but then with competition and with scope manufacturers pushing each other, we kind of moved to the standard being 30 millimeter. And now, like I said, the transition is kind of happening where most manufacturers are offering a 34 millimeter tube, so you get that extra adjustment in your turrets. There's kind of a lot going on in this portion of the scope. On this side, if I take this cap off here, and not all scopes have caps like this. This one in particular, this Primary Arms SLX, does come with an external windage turret where you wouldn't have to use this cap, but most shooters nowadays are just holding for their wind. They're not actually dialing when wind is happening or when wind compensations are happening, just because wind is so dynamic and you're reading it per shot. You can't really dial in, for example, 1 mil and then expect it to be good for the next 10 shots. Every shot is a little different because the wind is always changing. So having this windage turret uncapped gives you the ability to kind of zero it and then let it be. But like I said, some other scopes have a windage turret exposed where you can constantly be making windage adjustments. But like I said, most guys nowadays are just holding wind because that wind hold is always changing, and it's quicker to just do a wind hold in the reticle rather than dialing in on the turret between every shot. So that's generally what you're going to see on the right side of the scope is a windage turret. Go ahead and put that cap back on, because I don't mess with that thing a whole lot. All right. On the other side here, we have two different adjustments on this scope in particular, and it's pretty universal in a lot of other scopes also. So on the inner portion of this turret here, this is going to be our side focus parallax. So it's going to go all the way down from 10 to, I pulled out so this is a little stiff, all the way up to infinity. And basically, there's going to be other measurements in here from, like I said, from 10, 15, 25, 50, 100, 200, 500, and infinity. Those are going to be roughly the yardage that the reticle is focused to. Now, in more budget-oriented optics, that focus ring is not always going to be correct for the yardage you're actually focused in at. For example, if I have a target at 500 yards and I dial that focus ring to the 500 mark, there's a good chance in more of these budget-oriented optics that that 500-yard mark is not actually going to be perfect focus for that 500-yard target. That's not to say you can't get it focused. You're just going to be moving this adjustment around until your 500-yard target is focused. Now, on more higher-end optics, like the track torque we're going to go over here in a minute, that 500-yard mark has a lot better chance of being correct for a 500-yard target. So that's basically what that is. It's a focusing ring to get your reticle on the same focal plane as your target. Next to that, you'll see illumination for the reticle. This scope in particular, this Primary Arms SLX, it has settings all the way from 1 to 10. And then it also has on-off settings between its 1 through 10 settings. So if I expand on that a little bit, that's going to mean you might have the first setting on, and then there's going to be off. So the second setting, off. Third setting, off. And a lot of manufacturers are moving towards that nowadays, just so you can kind of, for your lighting conditions, you can have that illumination set to off right next to the setting that might be perfect for your lighting conditions. So for example, if I know I'm going to be shooting in dusk conditions, so early morning or maybe late evening, kind of midway light conditions, I know with this scope that I might need setting number 7. In other optics, I might have to have it off and then have to click through 6 settings to get to number 7, right? But in this one, like most manufacturers are moving towards, I can leave that setting in the off position between 6 and 7. That way, instead of having 6 clicks like in other options, I only have 1 click to get right onto 7 where I need it. So that's another nice feature that a lot of manufacturers are moving towards for illumination. At this point, we've covered objective lens, tube diameter, windage turret, focus, and illumination. Now we're going to get to the elevation turret. That is pretty much always on the top, and these have different functions within them. Generally, in the most basic sense, if I spin this turret counterclockwise, I'm adjusting to shoot further. For example, if I'm shooting a 300-yard target and I need 2 mils of elevation, if I'm at 0, I dial 2 mils by turning counterclockwise, and now I'm ready to shoot that 300-yard target. If I want to spin it back to 0, I'll turn counterclockwise, and you noticed another feature that's being more common on these precision optics, and that's a 0 stop. There's a mechanism within this elevation turret that I can set per the manufacturer's manual, where after I'm done dialing for different ranges or different elevations, if I don't want to lose my 0 and lose track of where I'm at in the turret, I can set that 0 stop, spin the turret clockwise, and once it stops, I'm right back on 0. It can be very frustrating when you are shooting different targets and moving this turret to different positions. Maybe you get a full revolution in, and now I have no idea where my turret's at. I don't have no idea where my 0's at, and basically I have to re-zero my rifle. But to alleviate that, some of these elevation turrets come with a, like I said, a 0 stop. I can just turn it all the way clockwise, and once it stops, now I'm on 0. You're not going to see that feature in a lot of the really low-end, dare I say, cheap optics. If you're not a guy that's going to be spinning the turrets a lot, that's something you can totally get away with. But in more of a tactical scenario or long range or precision scenario, you're going to want that 0 stop so you don't lose 0 on your rifle. We move back a little bit more. Now we're at the magnification ring. This is where we have our range of 5 to 25. It's not always universal when you turn clockwise to go to the low end of the magnification. Some scopes are different. You might have to turn counterclockwise or clockwise to get to that low magnification. But either way, it's going to be marked on the scope itself, and you'll just be able to select which magnification you want. A lot of optics nowadays are coming with a throw lever, is what it's called. This one in particular is removable. So in a hunting scenario, if you didn't want this snagging on your kit or your warm weather gear or something like that, you could take this throw lever off and make the scope a little bit slicker so it's less likely to catch on things. But it is a little bit nicer in a competition sense where if you need to make a quick magnification adjustment, zoom the scope out so you have a wider field of view, that throw lever makes it a little easier. Moving back a little bit more, now we're at the ocular lens. This is the lens where your eye initially meets, and a lot of manufacturers nowadays are making these ocular lenses adjustable. I have this one set for my particular eyeball to make that reticle as sharp as it possibly can be. And that's where these ocular lenses have their value. Like I said, you can adjust it, and we're going to be doing another video on the actual setup process behind one of these. But basically what you need to know here is you can adjust this ocular lens to make the reticle in this scope focus as well as it can possibly be to your specific eye. And that's where the value is in this. All right, so now I've taken you through this Primary Arms SLX 5 to 25. I'm going to bring another scope out and show you some of the differing features on maybe a little higher end scope. All right, so we got the Track Toric Ultra HD 4 to 25 by 50 millimeter scope in front of us. And based on what we learned before, that means we have a 25 at the tops to 4 times at the bottom magnification range. We have a 50 millimeter objective, and this one is also equipped with a 34 millimeter tube here. You're going to be seeing a lot of the same features with this one, but some upgrades. Let me turn this back up to 25 here, and I will point out that this is a lot higher end optic. This one comes in around the $1,500 range, and in a lot of the controls, they're going to feel a lot smoother. The clicks on the elevation and the windage turret are going to be a lot more defined, and the glass itself is going to be a lot better quality. All right, so working our way from the front to the back of this scope, like I said before, we have a 50 millimeter objective. Slightly smaller than the 56 millimeter on the Primary Arms SLX 5-25. So we may get slightly less light transmission, but this has a lot higher quality glass in it. So that image is really not going to suffer at all. It's probably going to be actually a lot better just because the quality of glass in this thing. Moving our way back, we still have a 34 millimeter tube. A little bit further back, now we're at our turrets. On the top, we still have elevation. On the right side, we have windage. And on the left side, we have side focus, parallax, and an illumination ring. A couple key differences here though. If you notice, when the turret's down like this, locked in place, I cannot turn it. Same on the windage. The nice thing about that, if I'm choosing to pack this rifle or carry it, if this rifle's bouncing around on my kit, or if I'm moving it around, bringing it in and out of the case, when these turrets are locked down, they're not going to move. But when I'm ready to move them, all I have to do is simply lift up, which is a nice smooth action on this torque scope, and I can make my adjustments. And another thing here with this little higher end scope, you can see the clicks are nice and defined. Let me see if I can get you the sound of the clicks here. They're not overdone. Like, these clicks aren't obnoxious. They're loud enough that if you don't have ear protection on and you're dialing this because maybe you have a suppressed setup, you're going to be able to hear them. But they're not so loud that in a hunting scenario, you're going to be scaring your animal off because these clicks are just knocking like crazy between adjustments. So it's a good middle ground there. Now, let me be quiet here for a minute. I'll spin this back to 0 and you can hear them. We're back on 0. Lock the turret down. And there we go. Same on the windage here. We can take the turret out, make our adjustments, lock it back down, and we're good to go. So that's another feature on one of these higher end scopes. The side focus parallax is going to function the same. It's going to have a lot of the same markings on it, but those markings have a lot higher chance of being correct when a company puts more research and development into developing that side focus parallax system and making those numbers match up to the actual yardage you're shooting. And out here on the side, we do have illumination. This knob in this particular optic is a lot easier to turn than that SLX, and it's just generally smoother. It's a little more defined between clicks. So that's something you're getting when you pay a little bit more for an optic. Moving our way back, we have our magnification range, pretty much in the same spot. Not many changes here, other than in this optic, it's a little bit smoother, feels a little better in the hand. The overall build quality of the scope, the finish is really nice. You don't see this sniper gray or just gray coloring very often. And we still have an adjustable ocular lens, so we can really focus in the reticle in this thing to our specific eye. Let me get a couple more options here. I'll show you the quick differences and we'll wrap this thing up. All right, now we have the Leupold BX3i LRP. This is a 4.5 to 14 by 44 millimeter scope. If we break that down a little bit, we know we have a 44 millimeter objective and a 4.5 times by 14 times magnification range. So a little bit narrower magnification range, but where this optic finds its value is having that narrower magnification range. They can offer a little bit more compact package. I have this optic mounted on a DPMS Diamondback G2, basically a DPMS G2 pattern AR-10, very compact rifle, and this scope pairs very nicely with that, where you get a lot of features in it still, but it's not weighing you down too much when you're trying to carry this rifle. So we know we have a 44 millimeter objective, moving back to a 30 millimeter main tube. So we are going to be slightly limited on the amount of adjustment we have in these turrets, but with this particular optic, we have a grid or Christmas tree style reticle. And honestly, I'm not going to be turning these turrets all that much. I'm going to be doing a lot of my elevation holds and my wind holds in the reticle itself. I'm mostly just using these turrets to zero the scope, and then like I said, I'm doing all of my holds within the reticle. It doesn't bother me really that we have slightly less adjustment in the scope. We still have a adjustable ocular lens here. In this particular model, it's not going to be just this end piece that moves, it's going to be this whole large piece at the end of the scope that moves. And this one does have a locking ring, which is a nice feature. So once you have that ocular set, turn that ring, snug it up against that ocular assembly, and your adjustment isn't going to be moving. Moving back a little bit, we have put that back on there. I have a capped windage turret again, because like I said before, I'm not usually using my turret to make windage adjustments. I'm just going to do it in the reticle. In my elevation turret, in this one, it's a little bit smaller. I only have 5 mils per revolution. In both of our other options, we had 10 mils per revolution. This one is still equipped with a zero stop, so once I turn and make my adjustments, if I get lost in where I'm at in my adjustments, I can just spin clockwise, and once the turret stops, boom, I'm on zero there. And I do have side focus parallax in this particular model as well. This one doesn't actually have number markings, which is not a bad thing. Like I said before, in a lot of the more budget-ended optics, those numbers aren't going to be correct anyways. So Leupold realized that and decided that reticle is going to be focused to your eye anyways. So instead of putting numbers, we're just going to put, higher and lower dots there, and then wherever that reticle is focused, that's where it's focused. So no problem to me that it doesn't have the arctic marks on it. This Leupold VX3i LRP is more in the mid-range of optics. The primary arms I showed you in the beginning, the SLX, that's kind of low mid-range. The Track Toric, that's more in the upper mid-range. Above that, you have your Night Forces, you have your Leupold Mark V's, and stuff kind of in that top tier realm. And this one's kind of right in the middle. I think this one, a few years ago when I got it, it was more in that mid-range. I want to say I paid like $800 for it, which is a pretty fair price for what you're getting here. This thing is going to be very durable. I've had this scope on multiple other rifles, and I'm not worried about it ever losing zero or never having any issues with the turrets or anything. So that's kind of what you're paying for when you delve into that slightly higher price point. I've had this optic for many years, like I said, many rifles, and I plan on swapping it out between many more rifles. So, all right, I'm going to plop one more rifle down on the shelf here. I'm going to show you kind of that low end of scopes and what you can kind of expect to see in that side of things. All right, now we have in front of us a primary arms, again, 4 to 14 by 44 millimeter scope. 44 millimeter objective. This one is equipped with a 30 millimeter tube, 4 to 14 magnification range. And this one in particular is equipped with a R-Grid 2 Bravo reticle. They offer this scope, Primary Arms does, and a lot of different reticle designs. That's just a particular one I chose. I tend to move towards the grid or Christmas tree style reticles, so I can do a lot of my work in the reticle, and I don't have to move these turrets a whole lot when I'm making firing adjustments. This one does come with, again, a adjustable windage, adjustable elevation, and a side focus parallax turret. This one does have an illuminated reticle again. This one actually does have offsettings between each illumination level, and we do have an adjustable ocular lens. Some of the trade-offs with this lower end optic, this one comes in, around the $300 price point. The glass quality, it's not going to be as good as that SLX, not as good as that Leupold, and definitely not as good as that Track Toric Ultra HD. But it's going to be good enough. This is just a 5.56, probably only going to be reaching out with this particular setup to maybe about 500 yards. So I don't need utmost quality glass. In the turrets, the adjustments, one click gets you 1 mil. And that's true for all the other optics I've showed you too. One click on the turret is going to give you 1 mil. Another option is MOA, and we can dive into that a little bit further in other videos, but that's kind of not the purpose of this one. But basically, in the different quality of optics, one click may not get you exactly 1 mil in these lower end scopes. In the higher end ones, or even the mid to high end, when you ask for a click on the turret, it's going to give you a click or really dang close to it, maybe 99.5% of a mil. In these lower end scopes, you might see 97, 98% of a mil. So basically what I'm saying here, that windage or elevation turret might not be exactly onto the adjustments you're trying to make, but that's okay. This is a $300 optic. It comes equipped with a really nice grid style reticle in it. The reticle's never going to change. If I'm trying to make elevation or windage adjustments, like I said before, I don't ever need these turrets. I can do all my work in the reticle, which I know is never going to change. The turrets might be off a little bit, but that's fine. I just need them to get this scope zeroed. Then I never have to touch them. On this scope in particular, they're actually not that bad. The clicks are pretty clear. Not super audible, but I know when I'm asking for a mil or one click, I can feel it when I'm behind the rifle. But that's kind of irrelevant at this point. Primary Arms, this being a $300 scope, they didn't put a lot of time or money and development into making these turrets 100% precise. They didn't need to be. They just need to get the scope zeroed. Then they put all their time and effort and research into this reticle, and that's what I need here. So basically, the bottom line, what I'm saying here, you don't always have to spend $1,000, $1,500 to $3,000 to get a scope that's going to work for you. If your goals are like, in this case, just to reach out to 500 yards with 5.56, maybe this $300 optic will get you by. If you want more features, better quality, better clarity, then by all means, step up to those higher end optics. But kind of the purpose of this video is to show you what the different options are and what you're kind of getting for your money. So we've showed you options from about $1,500 all the way down to $300. We've showed you the different features, why these are built the way they are, the meanings behind why these things are named the way they are, and hopefully you can make a more informed decision when you go to purchase your first or next precision rifle optic. A lot of these features are going to be necessary when you're trying to do what we're doing here, precision rifle shooting or even long range. You're going to need adjustable target turrets so you can accurately and safely adjust or compensate for the bullet drop that you're going to be experiencing. You're going to need a reticle or a windage turret to be able to adjust for different windage scenarios that you might be encountering. You're going to want to be able to focus that reticle to whatever focal plane or distance your target is on. Illumination, not always required. You might only be planning on shooting during the day, and that's fine. Most of the time, that illumination is just an added feature that these scopes come with that I'm not specifically looking for, but it's nice to have. And a lot of times, you're going to want that adjustable ocular lens to be able to focus that reticle exactly into your eye. All right, everybody. So I'm shooting this part after the fact. I thought it might be a good idea to go back and show you guys kind of how all these features work together in a long range or precision shooting scenario. So basically the scenario is we're going to be shooting a 500-yard target and there's going to be a little bit of wind involved. We'll say about 5 miles per hour. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is pick up that target. I can do that by manipulating my magnification ring. If I happen to have it towards the top of the power, I'm going to have a limited field of view. So I can turn that power down to one of its lower settings. That gives me a wider field of view, have a little bit easier time picking up that target. Once I have that target in my field of view, I can go ahead and zoom in on it and turn up to a higher magnification and get a little bit better view of that target. Once I have the target picked up, I'm going to be adjusting for my elevation next. I need to make sure I have an accurate range. If I'm doing that with a rangefinder or by measuring in the reticle, however you're going to do that, make sure you have an accurate range on it. That way you know what your bullet drop is going to be. So my ballistic calculator is telling me
for a 500-yard target, I'm going to be adjusting 3.8 mils. So I'm going to go ahead, adjust 3.8 mils on my elevation turret here. The little markings on the back, which is pretty common, is going to tell me to go counterclockwise to adjust up. I'm going to spin over to 3.8. So my elevation is accounted for. Now I'm going to account for any left or right bullet deflection, whether that be wind or spin drift, or there's a whole slew of things that go into it. But basically, if I'm adjusting left and right my bullet, I'm going to be doing that on the windage turret here. And for a 5 mile per hour wind at 500 yards, that calls for 0.6 mils of adjustment. So say I have a wind going from left to right, full value, like I said, 5 miles per hour. I need to move my bullet into the wind so it can be pushed into the target. And like I said, that's going to be 0.6 mils. So I'm going to give it 0.6 mils to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, there's my windage adjustment. I can leave this cap off, but I'm just going to go ahead and put it back on so I don't forget. Now I have my windage accounted for, any left and right bullet dispersion basically. Next thing here, I want to make sure my target is in as sharp focus as it can be. And that's done here on the side focus parallax ring. I do have a marking for 500 yards. So first I'm just going to preliminarily set it to 500 yards. And then I'm going to go ahead and look down my optic at that 500 yard target and then make any minor adjustments to this side focus parallax ring that would bring that target into perfect focus. Once I have that set, I have a nice clear view of my target. I'm good on my side focus parallax. Depending on the lighting conditions, I might use my illumination knob here. Right now I have it set in the off setting between 5 and 6. All I have to do is take it one click over. Now my illumination is on setting 5, and I have a nice bright red reticle, and I'll throw a little cut of that in the screen here. I don't currently need that, so I'm going to shut that back off. At this point, I have any bullet drop compensated for. I have left and right dispersion accounted for. Target's in focus. I have illumination on if I need it. I'm zoomed in to a higher power to get a better view of this shot. At this point, I would be ready to then, this rifle's clear, but I would be ready to then chamber the round, get on target, double check any wind conditions down on the target, and then when I feel comfortable, nice and calm, good fundamentals of marksmanship, I can break that shot and either watch for an impact or a miss and make a firing adjustment based off of that. So that's kind of how all these features work together. Last thing I want to show you here, when you're done adjusting everything on your scope, maybe you're putting it up for the day or you're done with that stage. For whatever reason, you're done with this 500 yard target. You're going to want to zero this turret back out so it's zeroed for the next time. You wouldn't want to make a firing adjustment for, say, 3 mils, for example. But if you leave it on 3.8 and then you adjust another 3 mils, you're going to be way off from your actual firing solution. So when you're done with this target, go ahead, spin it back to 0. This turret has a 0 stop, so I don't have to remember where my 0 was. I can just turn the turret back, and I'm back on 0. Nice feature with these.
Hopefully we were able to help you guys out here and go over through one of these precision rifle optics so you have a good idea of what you're doing on your next purchase. Don't ever hesitate to contact us, whether it be through YouTube or our Facebook page. Our company mission is to help get people into the precision rifle game safely and effectively. We really appreciate you guys checking out the Freedom Depot YouTube channel. Go ahead and comment down below if you think there's anything we might have missed. Don't be afraid to like, comment, and subscribe. It just helps us get out and reach more people. Try to get more people into the sport and help them do it safely. So, till next time, guys, we'll see you out on the range.